Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. It's Cammy Black here. It's Christmas time, and that can mean only one thing. It's the 1872 Cup. All kicks off this Friday at 7:35 with Glasgow Warriors taking on Edinburgh at Scotstoun. It's going to be live on Viaplay. I'm delighted to say that we're joined by commentator Rory Hamilton. Rory, hello.
Hello, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. The 1872 has gone through a few different iterations over the years as the format of what is now the Rugby United Rugby Championship has changed, and we've now got, I think, the traditional two-leg Christmas edition, and it feels very special. I think to have this more special. I think to have two legs over Christmas in a way.
Yeah, this was always the format that I liked. Rather it can get quite difficult if you're having to add up three scores to work out an aggregate and things like that. But yeah, I think this feels the way that it should be done, and it is. And I think when players at the start of the season probably say that there's certain fixtures that they look out for, dates in the calendar, games that they look forward to. At least we know that these two are fixed within that 7-8 day period over Christmas and New Year. And it's become such a tradition. I think the fans, they pack out both stadiums for it. It feels like that part of your festive experience is attending these games or watching them on the TV. So yeah, very much looking forward to Friday nights and then the week after.
And I suppose it also kind of feeds into the traditional build up to the Six Nations, because these 1872 Cup games, certainly over the past decade or so, have almost been a bit like the old Reds versus Blues you would get back in the day. Of this is a chance for some of the fringe players to really kind of show the worth and maybe get one over on the incumbent in the Scotland shirt ahead of the Six Nations selection. So there's an extra edge there as well, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's always been there. You've got so many direct rivals competing with one another to make an impression ahead of the Six Nations. But there's also that rivalry between the clubs, between the cities, probably often between players that may have been rivals all the way through their club and their school days, and coming together again. They might even be teammates. They will be international teammates, and just trying to get that edge over somebody that you know so well. It just adds a fascinating extra layer to it all. I think just because in Scotland we have two pro teams and they're both competing at a very high level in the URC this year, it just means that every position really is like a sort of international matchup. I think when the teams are named, you would expect there to be 10, 12 Scotland internationals in the starting 15. So and that's for each team. So every position there is trying to get a little nudge over another opposing player that's going to be competition for them come February.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the big competition is going to be at scrum half, where potentially we've got Ali Price and making his debut against Glasgow Warriors in an Edinburgh shirt. So that's going to, certainly an extra edge. I think you've only got Ben White potentially playing outside of Scotland at the minute, so there's going to be a real edge and real bit of niggle, I would imagine, in that position as well.
I know that. Do you know what? That's a side of this that I haven't yet got my head around. Seeing Ali Price in an Edinburgh shirt seems strange, but he's taken to it very well. It's all I obviously commentate on a lot of football as well, and usually when a player goes on loan to another team within the same division, there's the clause in the contract that they can't play against their parent club. So this is where that's going to be slightly different. Ali will be playing against guys that he knows extremely well, and that club battle that he had at Glasgow, particularly with George Horn. Now we get to actually see them both on the pitch at the same time will be absolutely brilliant. I think there's the other one that I'm really looking forward to, and I mean we don't know full selection yet, but Hamish Watson against Rory Darge at 7. If they're both playing from the start, if they're to be involved, I think that is a particular battle going into the Six Nations that is just fascinating, because Darge has got the national shirt at the moment, but I think we're almost seeing Hamish back to his best in these last few weeks. I thought he played really well in the World Cup game against Romania and was maybe a little bit unlucky not to play in the Ireland game. And I think he's maybe just taken this on and said, right, I've got a real challenge here if I want to keep going with the national team, and that's one area that I think is going to be fascinating.
And when you're getting ready for commentating on a match, before the lineups come out, is that what gets you excited, kind of looking for the matchups and the battles, or are there kind of some names that pop up and you think, oh, I'm really pleased that guy's playing because I know it's going to be a great match to commentate on?
I mean, it is anyway. I think we've had a few of these games, maybe when they had the 3-game series, that sometimes might be like the one in the middle might one team might go a little bit less strong. I think from both the selections from Franco and from Sean in recent weeks, I think they've been building up to this, and I really hope that they go all guns blazing, as strong as they can, because then every position is a fascinating matchup. Each player has that ability to get the better of their opposite number. So, I mean, we've just mentioned their scrum half and open side, but there's so many others. If you look at hooker, if it's Ewan Ashman against George Turner or Johnny Matthews or Dave Cherry, like whoever's involved there, that's another brilliant matchup. The second rows, it's the centres, wingers. I mean, it's every position really. Each team has the ability to, and each player has the ability to shine and really light up these games.
And we've got the first game at Scotstoun, and we've had. I mean, it's strange, I suppose, with the 1872 because the second leg's going to be at Murrayfield, and by all accounts selling very well. 20,000 tickets, I think, sold so far. How does it compare? I'm not going to ask you to choose a favourite. I'll not put you on the spot. But how does it compare, kind of commentating at the different stadiums? Is it do you find the atmosphere is different from as you commentating to feed off, or is it, or would you just prepare in the same way?
It wouldn't change my preparation. The bigger the crowd, the better, because I think that you can get wrapped up in it more. Sometimes almost lose yourself a little bit, forget that you're commentating, and just go with the crowd. And that's something that I love as a fan myself, and a huge fan of these games. To just get wrapped up in the whole emotion of it, the passion of the two teams, the two sets of supporters is great. But obviously Scottish Gas Murrayfield is a lot bigger. There's going to be more people there, but Scotstoun has its own unique atmosphere. It's a bit tighter. So both grounds really they host it really well. The Hive's been really good as well. I think that's a great addition for Edinburgh. Obviously, to have it played there, but so putting it in the big ground will be special. And you think back to a few years ago when we were doing these games with no fans at all, and so it's such a bonus to have. It'll be over 20,000 at Murrayfield. Scotstoun will be packed out. It'll just be two fantastic occasions.
I think that's it, and we certainly had some of the feedback from the Edinburgh fans. I think now they've got the Hive is that Murrayfield can feel a little bit like a neutral venue, but I suppose from a player's point of view and the player's prep, Edinburgh will have the home dressing room. They'll have the nicer facilities. They'll, they won't see this as a neutral venue.
No, and it's in their home city as well, so all their preparation throughout the week and then the hours leading up to the game is exactly what it would be as it was at the Hive. So yeah, they will see it. They're on home turf. That's their home game. Scotstoun is Glasgow's home game, and for each game, the home side will have the lion's share of the support, which makes it a big difference. I mean, that's still something that in sport, I think coaches and managers are desperately trying to work out how it plays such a big advantage, but it does, and so that's why everyone that pays their money for a ticket plays their part as well.
And in terms of commentating, we've got a really strong roster of Scottish pundits on Viaplay now. We've got Chris Patterson, John Barclay, and now Ryan Wilson. What, as a commentator, what makes a good commentator for you? What kind of helps you?
I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I'm spoilt being in the commentary box with these guys. Like every single one of them that I work with, they bring something different, and all are top drawer, like really, really good. They do their homework, which that's probably one of the helpful bits. But I would say bringing those unique styles is what I find particularly helpful. I know that if I'm doing a game if you take Ryan Wilson, I probably need to address things slightly differently, but I know that it's going to be a slightly different broadcast. He brings a lot of humor. It's a bit more playful, and it's great fun. I think Emma presenting has probably the harder task, because I mean she's sort of like the schoolmaster trying to keep the unruly kids in check when she actually has to get them in the right positions. They're not on camera for me, so I've got a bit of an easier job to control them, and I've sort of grown up having to do the same with like Chris Sutton and Ali McCoist as they're bickering away at a football game. So it's you don't quite have that side as much with the rugby boys, but there's a lot of fun that we have up in the commentary box, and the guys have doing the studio stuff as well. So so lucky. I think Ryan's been a brilliant addition to the team. He's taken to broadcasting like he's been doing it for years. A real enthusiasm for it, and I'm sure he's got some ridiculous antics planned for Friday night.
And I think you've got that, haven't you, now in the commentators, that nice balance of obviously Chris, although would probably say he's neutral, but probably with more of an Edinburgh bent with his career, and then John Barclay, who's played for both sides, and then Ryan Wilson. That adds, I guess, to the rivalry that's built up, and it's not something I think that we talk about 1872 and it going back over decades, but it is something I think that rivalry's built up much more recently. So having these guys who have played for the club more recently, that will no doubt feed into a little bit of niggle in the co-coms as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. And also they've got an insight into the dressing room. I mean, Ryan literally, because he's in the dressing room most weeks, doing an interview or training out on the pitch with the players. And even when he does games at Edinburgh, he's got a close connection with so many of those players, as does John. Chris is obviously still working with the players as well, with his kicking coaching and working for the SRU. So they've got a really good insight into both squads, and it'll be interesting to see how they react on the co-coms in the game. I think they're all professional enough to keep that slight degree of neutrality. We'll see what comes out.
I guess it makes it more exciting from a viewer's point of view to see that come through a little bit. I know you mentioned kind of you definitely get it more in football, but I think without overstepping the boundaries, definitely it makes it more interesting. I'm thinking kind of the pitch side interview you were doing with Ryan Wilson ahead of the Munster game, and some of the stories he was telling about coming out of bars in Munster, and some of the reception that he got kind of does add.
I should add, I wasn't in the bar. I was driving down from Dublin. Ryan went for a pint before the game. But I think fans probably want their man to stick up for their team when you're watching it, and if you think maybe you've been wronged, I think you're expecting your former captain or whoever it is, your former player, to back you and fight your corner, even if it is from the commentary box where you have no influence over the game.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to kind of speak to you about, and it's quite because obviously you commentate on football as well, and one of the big games you commented on recently was the Scotland-Spain one when Scott McTominay's goal was ruled out. And I know you were kind of vocal on on social media about VAR. It's felt a little bit, I think, with being a long-standing rugby fan, when seeing football fans moaning about VAR, a bit like John McClane in Die Hard when he says "Welcome to the party, pal." Do you kind of, from that point of view, do you think that rugby maybe treats the TMO process in a different way to football that makes football more kind of problematic and intrusive in the game?
Yeah. We could go on for hours about this. I think you're right. It helps in rugby that it's been around for a long time. I'm trying to think back to when it first came in and whether there was a real objection to it. I've always been a fan of having technology help, and I think that's where working on the two sports, and being a fan of both sports has it's helped me and it's hindered me probably in this, because I've always thought that you want to get the right decision. In rugby, I think it's used well, but it's taken time, a lot of time, and I think there's been spells when they've sometimes looked for too much and overused the TMO, a reliance on the TMO. Football's obviously in its kind of early phase of its development within it, and I think they're so scared to get any calls wrong. Everything's overanalyzed, and it almost feels like games are being refereed again live, which I think you're leading to. You're changing history essentially, and I think in rugby, a referee is probably more likely to call for help from the TMO rather than the TMO to be intervening quite so much. I know obviously the TMO, if he spots something, he will come in, but it might often be that the referee says, look, I think it was a try, but I would like to have another look at it. In football, it doesn't tend to work that way. It tends to be that the VAR official comes in and everything is checked. You know, if there's a goal scored, that's being checked. Whether it comes up on the screen or not, it's being checked, because I think there's this big fear that they miss something in a big decision. I think it's leading to just so many goals being disallowed, which I don't think they're quite so strict on it in rugby. They have been, definitely, and particularly we saw it maybe a little bit in the World Cup, and certainly 2-3 years ago when they went really, really heavy on any head contact, and we were seeing red cards for, I think, really unfortunate incidents. But I think that rugby has learnt from it better. Football's a bit more stubborn, doesn't really seem all that keen to learn and change from the process. But I think rugby has done it slightly better, in that, you know, you now talk about rugby incidents, or, you know, and mitigation. If there's a dip at the hips, a dip at the knees, a player's trying to get low, but it's a hugely physical, fast game. Like, there is going to be unfortunate incidents. So yeah, and it's I have a lot more frustration with it in football than I do in rugby, put it that way.
And in terms of the officiating, something we were talking about on the podcast recently is the standard in the URC has really improved, certainly over the last 2 seasons. It was maybe a bit more that I think there was maybe a lack of consistency in the way things are approached. And I think there's now more of a centralized approach to refereeing coaching. And we've got some referees that are now at a really high standard, particularly, you know, Holly Davidson refereeing a World Cup final now and running the line. Is that something you've seen as well, that you know, we seem in the URC to be talking less and less about refereeing decisions and more about the quality of the games?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the standards absolutely brilliant, and each team brings something a little bit different, which that makes it difficult for referees to approach games. You know, the Italians will play a different style to the South Africans, and then within the South African teams, they all play slightly differently as well. So that can only help the referees, as they're playing a really broad style of game themselves. You know, if you take maybe the top 14 in France, you wouldn't say that you've got as much a variety in the style of the way that teams approach games as you do in the URC. So the referees then are having to deal with that, a more Southern Hemisphere style approach to the game that, say Holly Davidson hasn't dealt with before, but has to learn quickly, and she's been a magnificent success story. Delighted for her to be on the panel for the Six Nations as well, to be running the line. I'd love to see her get the full gig, and I think that I would love to think that that's coming soon, because she really deserves it. We've seen Sam Grove White as well. I think is going from strength to strength. There's Mike Adamson. Scotland hasn't had top level referees for quite some time, and there's three that I've mentioned there that I think are all doing a fantastic job. But I think that's where, as I mentioned before, that having all these different nationalities, you have to learn to approach the game differently, and I think the URC really helps them when they step onto the international stage.
Yeah, and finally, then Rory, before I let you go, what are you calling over the two legs? Then I'm not going to ask you to predict this weekend's match. Over the two legs, who do you think's got the edge?
I mean, the answer I have to give is a win apiece. Really, a win apiece, with each team scoring more than 4 tries in each game, and both scores to be within 7 points. That gets everyone as many points as they possibly can, keeps everyone happy. So the winner gets 5, the loser gets 2, 7 over the total. I think that would be a pretty good outcome. I honestly think that they're too tight to call. Each time that I cover a game with a team, you see a strength or a weakness that you maybe think, oh, I wonder if they're going to struggle. I mean, if you look at, say, the recent European games, and you maybe go, oh, Glasgow, that was disappointing against Northampton, but then they bounce back and they win in France. For Edinburgh, the same. It looked like, the power of Clermont, they couldn't really deal with late on, but they've also won away to Ulster. They won at the weekend against more French opposition. When I think they both go all guns blazing with their 23 best players that are fit and available, and I don't know. That's an honest answer. I don't think one has the edge over the other. Glasgow have obviously recent history on their side. They've been the team finishing higher in the league as well, so that would probably give them a slight edge. But I think Edinburgh's recruitment over the summer has been excellent. I mean, Ben Healy's going to make a huge difference to them. He's a proper match winner in his own right. So it's going to come down to which of those big players step up. And when I say big players, that's 1 to 23. They've all got that ability to step up and be the man to win it. Be it Duhan, be it Sebastian, Tui Pelotu. There's superb players all over the pitch that can be that guy to win the game. So I can fortunately sit back, get wrapped up in all the atmosphere, and enjoy it. Just what's going to happen. It's an exciting time of year.
Yeah. Well, Rory, thank you very much for joining us and helping us with the 1872 preview. Hopefully, we've got 2 exciting games coming up over the next couple of weeks over the Christmas period. But we'll wish you a Merry Christmas, and thank you very much for joining us today.